good afternoon, folks. Today we're just going to talk, really about an outline of reviewing for chapter 9. Okay, we'll have a review assignment that tags along with this, but just to kind of review what we've gone over here in chapter 9. So, chapter 9. This is kind of an outline so you guys can know what we need to be studying and make sure we have a good understanding. So, in 9.1, we were graphing quadratic functions. Graphing quadratic functions. Okay, that consisted of using x equals negative b over 2a, which gave us that axis of symmetry, which then further gave us the vertex. After we found that x value of the vertex, we plugged it in and we got some f of x value of the vertex. So we'd be graphing quadratic functions. Of course, we learned about the standard form f of x equals a, x squared plus bx plus c. All right. Use the axis symmetry, got our vertex. After getting our vertex, then we really would set up a t-chart. Usually we would put that vertex value in the middle. Okay, vertex here. And we choose some x values around it, So we go, plus 2 and minus 2 in either direction. We used our axis of symmetry, and then lastly we would, use our coordinate plane to graph some parabola. Just an example here. We would graph some parabola, and we'd be done. We'd plot our points from our t-chart. So that was 9.1, graphing quadratic functions. We'll have some problems like that. So that kind of takes you through that process. Use, find the axis of symmetry. Find the vertex. Make a t-chart. So that's kind of where we were in 9.1. Let's continue on. 9.2, we started solve quadratic equations. By graphing. In chapter 8, we solved it by factoring, but now we're solving quadratic equations by graphing. Okay. And really, this just consisted, folks, we would graph the quadratic. Following from 9.1, we would graph related quadratic function. And what I mean by that, I'll tell you. We'll get an example here. So what I mean, example here. That 0 equals x squared minus 4x plus 2. And we were trying to solve that by graphing. We would graph the function. F of x equals x squared minus 4x plus 2. And then we would observe, after we graphed that function, then we would, to actually solve it, the solutions are the x-intercepts. I was going to say where across the x-axis, but yeah, let's call them by the x-intercepts. Are the x-intercepts. And we knew that in 9.2 we started talking about the idea, well, what if we have a parabola, that exists over here? It doesn't cross the x-axis. Well, this would have no real solutions, is what we kind of came to that conclusion. Sorry. I mean, something like this here, we could have no real solutions. and we didn't really graph it too many like those, at least in 9.2. We certainly did in 9.1. We also had quadratic functions. We recognized, excuse me, on this smartboard here. We also had, yikes. Let's just restart this one. Okay, we had graphs who only had one real solution. And those graphs, of course, only touch the x-intercept at one point. And then, of course, the more common parabola for us, ones that cross the x-axis twice. Two real solutions. We saw examples of all of these. And then one real solution. So that's kind of a summary of 9.2. We also, I suppose we did do some applications type stuff as part 2. And so applications, we would have, somebody throws a ball in the air, and it's modeled by, let's just say, h of t equals negative 16 t squared plus 156t. Okay. And this really, modeling some ball, its height in relation to time. So we'd have something like this. We have height and time, and we'd have a parabola. And we'd want to, see, we'd ask different questions about it. We'd ask, what time did it hit the ground? Well, that's the t value over here. And we'd also, what's the maximum height? Well, that's the h of t value here. That's the, the y value, if you will, here. Okay. This would be max height. The vertex there. And we also, the ball hits the ground here at the t value. So those were just a couple application type problems we did as well in 9.2. Then in 9.5, we learned about the quadratic formula. And in part 1, 9.5 part 1, we just applied the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we would just apply that, guys. And then in part 2, also before, we knew these equations needed to be in standard form. We knew they needed to be equal to 0 to solve. And we really stressed that here in part 2 as we started getting some more complex ones. But in the new material we're going to talk about in part 2 would be the discriminant and how, which of course is just the b squared minus 4ac piece of the quadratic formula. Okay. How this kind of relates back to part to 9.2. If we had if the discriminant was negative, we had no real solutions. If the discriminant was 0, we had one real solution. And if the discriminant is positive, we would have then two real solutions. And yesterday in our DLD, of course, we talked about linear, exponential, and quadratic functions and comparing those as well a little bit. So that's the end of our chapter 9. This is kind of a review. Just wanted to touch base, so we're aware of what all we've worked through here. This will be here for you. I'll print it out, make a PDF of it. But I also would like you guys to work on our review. Okay. and use your notes for your review. Come prepared Monday with questions. And we'll have another review assignment, and then we'll go ahead and get into our Chapter 9 tests. So thanks for watching. Enjoy your weekend. Try to stay warm. I think the forecast is pretty chilly this weekend.